Coming up on Network Africa. UN says Tigray's only accessible aid route impassable. South Africa declines to host Afghan refugees. Plus, Egypt to produce 1 billion COVID-19 vaccines a year. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboale. We begin in Ethiopia, where the United Nations says the only accessible route for delivering aid into the northern region of Tigray has been impassable for over a week, worsening the humanitarian situation there. Aid agencies have run out of food for distribution in most areas. The UN says at least 172 aid trucks are currently stuck in Samara, in the neighboring Afar region, unable to start the journey into Tigray via the border town of Abala. An upsurge in fighting along the route has made passage dangerous. Aid agencies claim there have also been delays in getting Ethiopian government approval to travel into the region. South Africa says it's unable to take in refugees from Afghanistan. The Department of International Relations, in a statement, says the country is already home to a substantial number of refugees and is seized with addressing their needs. It states that it had been requested to accommodate refugees who were in Pakistan and were on their way to other countries. The statement adds that South Africa is not in a position to accept them, as the refugees will be best served by remaining in Pakistan, their first country of arrival. Some other African countries, including Rwanda and Uganda, have agreed to host Afghan refugees as they wait to be resettled in other countries. South Africa's Deputy President, David Mabuza, has announced that if people are hesitating to come out for a vaccine, then vaccines will be taken to their homes. He was speaking during a vaccination monitoring drive in Mahale City near Johannesburg. So far, nearly 13 million people in South Africa have received a shot of the vaccine, with 6.2 million fully vaccinated. But the government is pushing for more vaccines to be taken in order to meet the 40 million vaccinated persons by December.
A huge crowd followed the Deputy President, David Mabuza, accompanied by the Gauteng Premier, David Makura, everywhere they visited, to encourage people to get vaccinated against COVID-19. They went to shopping centers, taxi ranks, and local health centers. Deputy President Mabuza says owing to observed hesitancy among the people in some areas, the vaccination campaign will now be taken to their homes.
We're no longer going to wait here at the vaccination sites. We are going to take the vaccine to our people. Some are reluctant, some they're having fake news, rumors about the vaccine. So we explain to our people that no, the vaccine is something that will help them, not something that will kill them.
On the new virus mutation variant, currently referred to as C.1.2, being studied in South Africa, the Deputy President says there's nothing to worry about for now.
Well, we're briefed on Tuesday. We're briefed about the new variant. For now, nothing to worry about the new variant. It's still under control. If we feel that this new variant is now a problem, the Minister of Health will announce and how best we want to deal with it. But for now, we're tracking it. We're tracking it. No reason to worry for now.
Deputy President Mabuza will be continuing the vaccination monitoring exercise in other provinces in the coming days. The hope is to get about 40 million people vaccinated by December this year, as the third COVID-19 wave in the country makes way for a likely fourth.
Our South Africa Bureau Chief Betty DIBIAH joins us now for more on the situation in the country. Betty, let's begin with, the vaccination campaign. The government has introduced a number of out-of-the-box initiatives in the past month. But how is this working out so far in getting more people to take the vaccine?
Well, it'll be unfair to give all credit to government. It's mostly a lot of public-private sector partnerships. You have the private pharmacies like Clicks and Discam supporting government. In the case of Gauteng, where you have over 3 million people already vaccinated, about half of that was from the private sector, the partnership with the private sector, and also volunteers. There was a drive-through story we did earlier, which has some community members as well as some faith-based organizations organizing pop-up centers, drive-through centers. And now we hear the Deputy President saying that for those who are hesitating and those who are worried about some of the things they've heard, that they will actually bring the vaccines home to them. A lot of door-to-door campaigns by civil society organizations are going on to convince people to sort of allay their fears, to give it a trial, take the vaccines, like so many other people have done. And it's yielding fruit. Now you have 12.8 or 12.9 million people already vaccinated, about half of that fully vaccinated. The options we're using now, although you have some other approvals, we're using the Pfizer and the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So it trickles in some areas and then a lot of turnout in other areas. Although you have a non-governmental organization calling itself the National Vaccine Monitoring Group, civil society grouping, going around and raising awareness. They're saying they're going to picket tomorrow. They'll march, saying that there is unequal distribution of vaccines. That's their claim from the feedback they got from the people. Some of the what they call underserved communities, probably in the rural areas, hard to reach areas where they have problems and probably not enough money to go to the centers to get their vaccine. So these are some of the things they want government to look into, things like that.
Okay, the government now says it's aiming for 300,000 inoculations per day. How realistic is this for the country, and is it being met so far?
I can't really say that, but province by province, they're trying quite a lot. I know Gauteng province, which is like the Lagos of South Africa, is the smallest in size, but the most populated with about 15 million people, but you have 3.3 million people already vaccinated. Then you have a province like the Northern Cape, which is very large in size, mostly desert, but it has 1.3 million, the estimate for 2021 people, but only 250,810 people already vaccinated. So it's relative, but they're making effort. Gauteng alone on Friday, Gauteng has Johannesburg and Pretoria, among other cities. There's Ekurhuleni, which is an industrial area, where they had, just on Friday alone, 75,683. So if all the other big cities or bigger provinces are trying to match up with that, that may be achievable by government, but they're taking every day at a time.
And away from the vaccination campaign, let's speak about the statement released by the Department of International Relations, saying South Africa can't take in refugees from Afghanistan. Just speak to us about that and how it's being received in the country.
Well, that statement was sent out last night saying that they're not in a position at this point to take in more refugees because the country is already home to so many refugees or who are benefiting from the social services or being taken care of from by the country. You talked about Uganda. We know even in Uganda you have people talking about the security concerns of having Afghan refugees coming into the country. But in the case of South Africa, their hesitation may not be unconnected with the issue that they had recently with a group of refugees. It's still ongoing, where they were on their way to, or their area of desire is totally different from South Africa, and they said, okay, go to these countries are not taking you. A very messy situation that they had, especially last year and the year before. You had videos of violence even within the church that housed some people. That may be not unconnected, with that. And they also talked about the country or the people seeking refuge, best served in the place where they're going. There's so many issues at play here. They were not particular. They didn't mention names of countries, but some of the concerns may be, apart from security, the issue of the logistics as well. But we have Amnesty International saying that South Africa should live up to its international obligations, helping out those in need at the point that they are in need. We don't know how that is, but that's a statement that the executive director released this afternoon, saying they should be able to open their doors, but each to his or her own. The countries are dealing with different issues, and that's their position at this point. Whether that will change, we don't know.
All right then, Bessie, thank you so much for the update.
Thank you.
Still on the COVID-19 pandemic, Egypt says it plans to produce more than 1 billion doses of China's Sinovac COVID-19 vaccine a year. Health Minister Hala Zaid says under a deal with the Chinese firm, a factory in the capital Cairo would make more than 200 million doses a year for the local needs. Another factory will produce 5 times as many for export, mainly to African countries.
The manufacture of the locally produced Sinovac vaccine by Egyptian firm VACCINATION is underway as the country aims to intensify vaccinations ahead of a 4th COVID-19 wave. So far, around 1 million doses have been distributed to vaccination centers across the country.
We've been through several phases in relation to transferring the technology from our Chinese partners. They've overseen all production stages and ensured that they match perfectly with the Chinese Sinovac company's production lines.
The firm is now in talks to procure more licenses for local production, where around 7 million people have received at least 1 dose of the vaccine out of a total of 10 million registered individuals. Last week, Egypt's Minister of Health said they expected coronavirus infections to begin to increase after a few months of low infection rates, with a peak of a 4th wave expected in late September. In recent months, Egypt has also received shipments of vaccines made by Sinopharm, AstraZeneca, Sputnik, Sinovac, and Johnson & Johnson. The country has recorded over 289,000 cases, including more than 16,740 deaths. Officials and experts say the real number is far higher, but not reflected in government figures because of low testing rates and the exclusion of private lab results.
Well, in just a moment, we'll have more on Egypt's vaccine production. Plus, a Ugandan mother creates online STEM club during lockdown. That's in a moment. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Still on Egypt, where the country says it plans to produce more than 1 billion doses of China's Sinovac COVID-19 vaccine a year. Our VOA correspondent Edward Iranian is in Cairo. He joins us now for more. Ed, it's good to see you.
Thank you, Tenny. Thank you for having me.
So this local production of vaccines is, of course, expected to largely ramp up the country's vaccination drive, isn't it? But how willing are people to take the Sinovac vaccine?
My experience talking to people gives me the impression that many people are reluctant to get it, and a lot of people that have gotten it were required to get it. People who are surgeons, who work in hospitals. There was a story on the main Egyptian government paper, Al-Ahram, website today that the educational community will be, I guess the word is, requiring people to get these vaccines. So my gut tells me that people are reluctant, and the numbers show that as well, because 7.5 million people out of a population of 100 to 105 million is less than 7.5%. So that's not a lot.
Okay, this will also be beneficial to other African countries, though. Officials say another factory will produce 5 times as many exports. When can we expect distribution for other countries on the continent?
Well, I would assume, and I'm just guessing, that probably they will be exported to the neighboring countries first, countries like Sudan, countries like Libya, countries like Tunisia, and then from there they will be exporting to countries farther afield. And if they have 1 billion doses that they're producing a year, at least that's what they're projecting, that should be enough to cover a number of African countries beyond the immediate neighbors. So assuming that people in those countries really want the vaccines, the media has been giving the impression that people are eager to get them, but that's not the impression I get on the ground.
And just finally, health officials have warned of a 4th wave approaching this month. With only 7.5 million of the population vaccinated, what measures are authorities putting in place to curb the spread of the virus?
Well, the health minister has been pretty much following whatever the World Health Organization has been asking countries across the world to do. Speaking to the medical professionals here, I would just quote one of them, a surgeon friend, who told me that he thinks that Egypt has a very high herd immunity, if you've used that expression before, and that for that reason it hasn't been as badly hit as some of the neighbors like Tunisia and Libya. That is my impression. I'm not sure if that's not being a medical professional, I couldn't corroborate it, but that's what he tells me.
All right then, Edward Yeranayan, VOA correspondent, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed.
My pleasure, Tenny.
In the meantime, Botswana's president has suspended the Assistant Minister for Health for attending a tombstone unveiling ceremony for his late father in breach of COVID-19 regulations that ban public gatherings. Setomo Lelatisitswe apologized and said the event had been planned a long time ago and could not be postponed. He's been suspended for 1 month. His family was unveiling their father's tombstone as their mother took off her mourning dress as required in the culture. Only cabinet meetings, parliament sittings and funerals are allowed in Botswana. The government banned all other gatherings because of rising COVID-19 cases. The introduction of compulsory face masks across Kenya was designed to protect people during the pandemic. But members of the country's deaf community say they have been negatively impacted. Face coverings prevent lip reading and hide facial expressions, making it extremely difficult for people who are deaf or suffering from hearing loss to communicate. As a result, some are lobbying for the widespread use of transparent face masks.
Rush hour approaches in Nairobi, and street vendor Mercy Ayuma is making final preparations to receive customers. 32-year-old Ayuma, who was born deaf, usually sets up at 2 of Nairobi's busiest bus terminals at about 6 a.m. every day. But Ayuma says communicating with customers has become extremely challenging since the COVID pandemic hit. Even after her patrons began returning to the streets in their old numbers, most of them were now wearing masks.
When the mask wearing started, It was very challenging, especially for the deaf, because we mostly read the lips of our customers to communicate. We must speak without our mask on too, in order to effectively communicate, especially with people who do not understand sign language. With the mask on, it's so hard to tell what they're saying.
She says that several members of the deaf community have fallen foul of the law due to COVID restrictions and procedures that they find discriminatory.
One of my friends was arrested for not wearing a mask. At the time of their arrest, they were on a video call. The police officers thought he was pretending. We had to step in to stop the arrest by providing his disability identification card.
21-year-old Sharon Chirono is a waiter at a popular cafe in one of Nairobi's suburbs. Sharon and her colleagues are all hearing impaired. She says she's lucky to find a job during such a difficult time and in a place where disabilities were embraced.
I've worked here for 2 years actually, from 2019, and I just found myself here that this is the hotel that is friendly to the deaf community, and I really feel much relaxed and comfortable since there's an inclusivity and equality with these people, and they understand us very well. And in terms of communication and whatever, we usually teach them signs and they communicate in writings. So anytime we talk with our visitor, we have to live with them basic sign language of whatever they do to us.
With 724 new infections reported on average each day. That's 53% of the peak, the highest daily average reported in March 30th. However, Ayuma says she's worried that her business may not make it.
Now, Shamim Wayaisha caught the coding bug while helping her son, a young pilot, with his lessons. She went on to start the Supersonic Aviators Club in her home to help children, especially girls, develop their interest in aviation and STEM. Wayaisha has taken the club's activities online to work around Uganda's strict COVID-19 lockdown.
These are the steps we take to build a website.
It's not your typical classroom. 3 times a week, these students gather in their teacher's garden in Uganda's capital, Kampala, to learn how to code. Her aim is to train the next generation of Ugandan coders. Shamim Wayaisha used her own savings to start a club, which mainly caters to underprivileged children who don't have access to equipment and internet. The classes are free of charge, and here, children as young as 6 can learn the fundamentals of coding.
The system works in the way that we recruit children and we introduce them to STEM education using coding, space, aviation, and climate change. In coding, we learn different languages. For example, we learn HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. I also teach them to use codes so that they be able to command the computer to do different tasks.
Wayaisha was inspired to take up coding 3 years ago when her 7-year-old son expressed interest in aviation and coding. Despite the challenges of ongoing lockdowns and restrictions due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Wayaisha finds ways to keep the classes going and the children engaged and active, especially when schools are closed.
Before COVID, I used to host many children into my house. They would come, they would study. But right now, because we have to follow the SOPs, children have to learn from outside my compound, whereby we face a problem of sunshine. It's too hot outside. Sometimes when you're learning, it rains. And other parents, they don't have money to buy internet. So few of them go online.
So can you go through this? Can you
Africa is the world's last major untapped market for internet access. Only 16% of its population use the internet, according to the International Telecommunication Union. Analysts say technological innovation is seen as a quick way to help promote lasting economic growth and development.
With my passion in aviation and climate change, I hope that one day I'll be able to discover biofuels which planes can use instead of fossil fuels which damage the environment.
click the file on the code editor?
While it remains unclear how long Uganda's strict COVID-19 lockdown will last, Shamim has also taken the club's activities online, with classes offered to anyone interested in coding. She also says she's looking for donors to help buy more laptops and equipment for her aviation and space programs. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shoboale.